Right. Onegaishimasu.
Onegaishimasu.
Okay, let's just do something. Okay, shaking out the arms a little bit. Do that to the sides. Top. Okay, swimming up front and back. Right, sink into the whole body. Whoa. Okay, great. Just take it a little bit into the head. Just nice big circles. Nice and slow. Both ways. Right well in the neck. It is the shoulder. Just bringing the shoulders up. Yeah, dropping them down and then nice big circles. The way. To the back. In the side. Together. Great, changing direction. Great, on the elbows. This side. Great, let's together. Check out the wrists. Get into the chest, curling front and back, using the breath as well, breathing out here and then Nice deep breath in, Drew. Looking at the sides a little bit. Good. And then roll it in circles. Rolling the hips. Directions. Widen the legs a little bit, rocking side to side. Sitting down into a squat here. Coming up, bring the feet together, rolling the knees. And bending straight the legs. Great, taking all the weight down. A little bit of pressure against the legs with the arms and pressing in with the legs. Great. Okay, coming back up, working the ankle. One way, on the other. Nice and gently rolling the toes. Great, coming off the ground, rolling the ankle. Great, shaking it out, changing the side. And the toes. Rolling off the ground. Shaking it out. Great, one leg in front of the other. Just pressing out, stretching the back leg. Dropping the weight to the floor. And just play with kind of raising the heel out, just pressing it down. Great, changing the side. Good, it's coming down into the front hip. Just play here with going, stretching into the hip, and then drawing the hips back, stretching the leg back, opening, closing the hips. Oh, yeah. That's one hip, taking the opposite hand down, stretch into it, and then just open out with the opposite hand up to the ceiling. Great, and nice and sucking in back. changing the leg, and rocking into the hip. Great, last one, bringing the hand down, reaching up to the top. Great, bring both hands down, bring the legs back, and just work with kind of treading the heels again. So kind of pressing up through the shoulders, pressing the hands into the ground. You're treading through the back of the legs. And nice and slow, bringing the knees to the elbows, super slow. One at a time, obviously. Stretching back one more time. Just walking the feet in. Walk the hands to the feet. Let the body fall to the front. Relaxing the upper body as much as you can. Bringing the hands onto the ankles. And nice and slow, bending from the knees. Roll up the body, curl up the spine. And then just extend it, coming up with the breath, stretching up to the top. Bending all the way down, drawing it down into the ground. Curling of the spine. Let the tip of the spine and the skull and the hands curl up legs. Use the breath just to guide the movement. Just one more coming down. Relax again at the bottom. Nice deep breath out. And then again, breathing in, curling up through the spine, nice and slow. And then just planting the feet, keep the feet planted. Shaking the rest of the body out. Shake out the wrists a little bit again. Down, side to side. Rolling the arms down. Shake out the legs. And lastly, just making the movement smaller and smaller. And come to a full stop. Great, 𝒂𝒂𝒄𝒐𝒗𝒆𝒓. Okay. Okay, great. We're just going to do a little bit of 𝒊𝒂𝒂𝒏𝒄𝒂𝒄, so take your time with it, really finding the back, sinking into the ground each time, and go straight into the cup. Okay, great. This is not really a technical point. It's mostly, again, it's about kind of later going into the transition to Kinanagari and just being kind of sensitive to this kind of feeling that goes into the body. So think about when you ground here with the cut. Obviously, you've got this foot, you've got a lot of feeling going down, bam, bam, bam. Everything's going down as the foot, everything's going here. See if you can feel the kind of reply from the ground, which is kind of strange. But if the body's open, you'll feel you should get a sense that as you ground in, the same with that sense of like throwing the basketball thing. Yes, we were doing yesterday. That sense of going into the ground, but feel there's a kind of response up from the ground. So the ground's kind of pushing back, not in a personal way, but there's a feeling like if I enter weight into the ground and the joints are open, then there's going to be a kind of feeling up through the spine. And this, in order to feel that, I need to not be in these kind of positions because anything like this is just going to kind of block it straight into the shoulders. So just feel that the body, especially the spine now, kind of keeps that openness from the top position. This position, try and sense that you can maintain that through the cut, and then just listen to what happens in the body through the cut. So you want a really strong cut, obviously into the ground. Just feel that the body should be set up in a way where I can kind of feel like there's a lengthening through the spine, and that's what we're going to kind of use later. But it's kind of tricky to set the body up in a way where it's going to kind of receive it. Yeah. And it's a similar feeling here, just play with this also. If you think of the 𝒂𝒊𝒏𝒈 going into it. Obviously, this is kind of in all the techniques. You think of like tiny henko, you've got the same kind of lift through the body. The clearer one is if you go to like 𝒂𝒊𝒐𝒏, that first step of like dropping the body in. So that sense that I'm kind of, again, I'm entering all the weights going down into the ground, as if I'm kind of cutting with the sword. But again, there's a kind of length that goes up through the body that's kind of received from the ground, through the pathway. But if I block it with the body like in something like this, then the pathway is going to get kind of blocked out. So just feel it now as you drop in like this. Again, that sense of lift through the body that I'm going to later use to take into that movement. So just feel it kind of drop in, that, drop in, that. There's a kind of the body needs to have that kind of, your body's under tension, but you want kind of elasticity to it. So you want it to kind of receive the ground flow. The key joint for us, especially in this one, is the knees. So if the knees are locked, I'm just going to block that. That movement's just going to get kind of blocked off. Well, that pathway is going to get blocked off more. Especially the knees needs to be kind of soft. Go in and out of this. Play with the sword. Play with the kind of first 𝒊𝒏𝒈. Play with that drop in with the body. It's not really a technical point. It's more more of a feeling. Okay, just play now going into Zengo. So we've got this movement. Again, feel that length through the spine, and that's later you're going to kind of feed off that movement. But for now, just let it kind of settle into the body there. Feel that you've got the length, and then take it. There. So see, in this case, you're going to kind of release from the feet, find the movement. But again, keep that elasticity in the body. So you don't want kind of rigid movement with the arms. Try and get a sense that it's going to the whole body as a unit goes elastically to the back, elastically to the back. So. Especially again, keeping the knees open. Let them really receive that feel from the ground. And again, if you want to play with a slightly more exaggerated form of this, then go to the N10 work. Just continue that from the Morotodoro. So it's not the same movement, but it's got a similar feeling to it. So again, you're kind of dropping into it, and then that shift translate. Let the spine then unravel the movement. So you've got the hips dropping in, and then the spine coiling over. So that into. In this case, we work on something that's very flexible. Again, from the ground, rolling out. So pressing into the ground, but obviously receiving back into the body, pressing it through. So just think about kind of creating a pathway to the hand from the ground to the hand all the time. So it always feels like it's kind of connecting in. And the connection for us is always going to be the foot, generally speaking. Nice. Yeah. Nice. Great. Just take it now into your Komanuchi. So working on the spot, again, just working with that sense that you enter the ground, and again, receive it, kind of feeling back from the ground, back up from the ground. So everything's going down, dropping in terms of the structure, but especially with the spine, especially the position of the head, the shoulders, let them be open. And again, the knees, really big, important joint in the system for this kind of work. So keep the knees open all the time. Think of the knees like kind of cushions for the body, both ways. They're kind of receiving both ways. Right. Yeah. Great, and we'll just go a little bit into the hip work here. So play with this again a little bit. If you go to this movement with the jaw, it's going to rocking with the hip this way. So the hips kind of rolling in this kind of figure of eight. So if you got this kind of figure of eight with the arms, you've got the hips also generating that kind of motion. If you really were to exaggerate it, just totally out of balance, but that kind of movement in the hip, where you've got a whoop, whoop, whoop. The key with this again is the pathway into the ground. So think about the legs, the weight in the legs shifting. You can do this just like this with the slaughter, something like that. Very simple kind of exercise. But just feel the key thing here is related to take from this exercise is when you do the fifth subgroup like this. Again, it's that sense of shifting the weight through the hip, through the hips, through the hips. So I don't want to have a sense that I'm kind of pushing off the ground in any way. So again, it's really just about keeping the contact with the ground, shifting the weight, and shifting it across the feet. So I really feel as you do this kind of movement, shifting the weight. Again, just think about the pathway from like an arc across the feet and the hips, and think about the weight just constantly going whoom, whoom, like a kind of slinky. Whoom, whoom. So the movement's kind of waving across. Obviously, the kind of waist, this whole area is kind of derived from that movement, but the contact to the ground is what's important. Just for now, a really simple exercise. Just play with it a little bit. Yeah, and then do the same thing. Yeah, with the step. So you can do the static opposite, and just play with the same idea, just shifting the weight in this way, and try and keep that sense here. The back foot, especially now, keep it flexible on the ground. So the main thing you don't want to do with this is just kind of place the feet in that way. That's kind of the beginning for it, obviously, just getting the coordination and placing. Then think about really the feet just trying to stay in contact with the ground all the time. Think about like Velcro on the feet or something kind of sticky on the feet. So there's a sense of kind of rolling in and out of the feet. But just play with it a little bit and slightly exaggerate it so that feeling. Movement becomes super clear. Yeah, great. Yeah, and then just take it back into the fifth. So you're just rolling that. And the hands take a lot of attention as well. So let the hands do let the arms do what they're doing. When we get to that, so that's kind of automatic. And then really start to go to the hip work. So that sense of maintaining the groundwork. So you want one nice smooth transition the way with the raise and the curve. So That's it. Right. Nice. Okay, great. Just play with stepping into it now. So with the step, really keep that sense of the ground underneath it now. So what you don't want to do is loose that. If you're going to step into it and kind of just drop the foot into it. So really consider how you're shifting the weight in the hip here through that movement, dropping into the ground. Just try and keep like a maximum amount of contact with the ground. I want to kind of raise the foot kind of minimally through the movement. And we go faster, the leg's probably going to come up a little bit more. We're going to kind of bring the knees up, kind of explode out, but just going to keep the steps kind of small, condensed. Mostly focus on shifting the weight, not really stepping forward. Great, and then think about going backwards as well. So you can do this two ways. You can do it in the way where I'm basically mirroring the 𝒊𝒏𝒈, where you're kind of coming into this kind of position, which is good in a way to kind of get the hips in those kind of same positions. But obviously when we do this in a more practical way, then the movement's going to kind of just come up and down like this way, but still working with the 𝒂𝒂𝒏. So just play with both of them, because one of them's good for training and one of them's better for in terms of practice also. So they're both kind of useful. But the key thing again is that transition across the hips. So whatever you do with the arms, the hips are working on that same kind of pattern to the ground. Yeah, so there's a tendency when we start to go back, the hips start to work like this, they start to work kind of square on again. So like that kind of feeling, like the hips go back as one unit, which is true, but have the sense that you're taking one side forward. So if you think about it again in a kind of practical way as you come through to the back, you're looking for one hip to be able to wedge forward. So one hip basically needs to press back. So we've got this movement all the time. If you think about like the third 𝒊𝒏𝒈 with the Jo, that kind of movement, or the second 𝒊𝒏𝒈, that kind of movement. So that's similar kind of feeling, but I need to basically choose a hip so that one can basically press forward as you go, but I don't want the hips to kind of just work backwards in that sense. So think again, it's really about the transference of the weight, and now really with the ability to shift the hand with that. So let one really take that kind of movement. So really it's kind of wedging it work again. That's it. Yeah, good. Good. Yeah, and again, just play a little bit with the arms as well. So you're working with an empty hand movement. So obviously the obvious one is this kind of coming in with a yokomen, with a strike this way, with the hip coming in. But we use these kind of entry moves all the time anyway. So just play with the hands, and again, the ability to transfer the weight of the body into the hands. So we also use these in terms of coming into a kind of blending movement. Blending in. The key thing again is the hips being able to shift the weight in motion, and then pass it out through the hands as well. So play with forwards, backwards. We're generally, in terms of blending work, we're generally kind of coming back with it. But just play with those kind of movements. And again, the key is that sense of passing into the hand. And you can do it with a yokomen strike, just like, or you can do it with more of a blending motion. And if you get lost with the hands, like what should I be doing or anything like that, go back to the idea of like having a sword in the hands. And all of these moves are basically split out from the kind of sword movements we're making. So it's very easy, just go back to the sword. What am I doing there? And then just start to open it out. Nice. Whoosh. Good. Super. Okay, going back to the sword. So we'll go into the ski work. So just play now with, you've got the yokomen, play with either the 6th ski or the 7th ski this way. Just kind of mix them in. So we've got number 5. With 6. We can go with 7. Whoosh. Whoosh. Okay, the main thing with this, the main work with the ski is getting that same sense of this kind of striking pattern, or this kind of impact where you've got a really like percussion entered into the ground. In a way that's kind of easy because everything's going down, and I just basically meet it with the structure of the body. Now, try and look for the same feeling in the out movement. So you're doing something a little bit more complex in terms of the structure, but you want that same sense of the impact, like percussion, through the tip of the sword. But obviously it's been pulled away from it, it's been pushed out from the body. So the main thing is you've got that kind of thing where just pass the sword forward. It's just a kind of poking movement. Or you've got a movement which is like a compression down, and then coming into it. And you're looking for that same kind of structure through the body, but it's just a little bit of a different orientation. But just play with that sense of pressing that movement out from the ground. So you're kind of squeezing it away from the body. Again, that ground contact stays really, really full. Don't lose it as you kind of go into this. Yes. Nice. Right, so taking into a little bit of kindergarten work. So you've got now the cut. Just play the really simple like 𝒊𝒂𝒕𝒆𝒂𝒃. 𝒊𝒂𝒕𝒃. And the first thing now is again we're working on kind of this week is that sense of entering the ground, use it to kind of take you forward. So first, just really think about just really concentrate on the transition from the strike to the thrust. Don't really think about so much power. Again, it's just trying to get the coordination, get everything together. Together. Either it's the left side or right, just play with a super simple cut. Maybe 6 or 7. Yeah, and what's really important now, really think about the ski. The main thing that will block this movement is thinking of the ski as a kind of forward motion. So the idea that I'm kind of moving the body and then thrusting with it. Like that's true, that's what you're doing, but think of the actual motion of it. Again, it's about the relationship to the ground. So play with really keeping the body kind of condensed, and play also not moving the back foot, especially if you go to like 6. Although you do move the back foot in terms of application, the feeling is that you don't really lose the ground with it. So again, it's as if you're kind of squeezing the movement out. Think about the ground down and that, rather than so much like this kind of forward motion. I get kind of lost somewhere in that kind of gap. Think about kind of squeezing them out. If you think about that ski work, like in a classic strike, that sense of squeezing the strike out from the ground, that kind of feeling. Now you're doing like ring, something like that. Yeah, good. Yes, that's yeah.
So there we go. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Cheers, Michael. Bye.
You're welcome. Okay, we'll play with Wanderer. This is this one I use is basically for the next step in this, where you're kind of going into a kind of sustained flow through the move. So if you think about 7, then basically becomes like this kind of pattern where you just keep kind of flowing through it. So play with this a little bit. The feeling that minimize totally the sense of the focus in the sword. So you're just looking now, if you go to this kind of exercise, like the sense of placing the weapon in the ground. The main thing to feel again is how the feet are relating to the ground. But play now with, you've got that, 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 that. So I'm really just take everything to the ground, minimize totally the kind of movement here. I want to harmonize the arms with the movement. When I'm really focused much more on the ground, the feet and the feeling below the feet. So just play this kind of, it's like peeling the feet. You place the weapon, place the weapon. It's pretty much walking with structure and with a sword. Just play with it a little bit. Again, it's about shifting the weight, relating to the ground. Feeling all the time there's a structure beneath the sword. So it's like you're taking the sword for a walk. You just walk with it. Yes. Right. Okay, make this tricky. You now do the same backwards. So you want to keep the same organization. So the right side, this is working with number 7. So right side cut, left side thrust. But again, just imagine you're kind of walking the sword through the movement. So you want to press the body back. That's the wrong one. That. So you want to just keep a kind of weight in the sword, like kind of placing it in the move. But now working on hips rolling backwards through. That's it. Okay, now just free the movement a little bit. Work with any direction, any movement. But again, you just consider especially the knees now, and this feeling of them aligning with the feet all the time, and the hips basically being supported by that joint. The knees and the feet, the hips supported by the knees and the feet. So really play now with, you're just kind of moving the sword through the space. You can play with any kind of movement there. The best pattern is that kind of 7, where you're kind of cutting and thrusting, because it gives you a kind of real flexibility with the hips, or gives you a flexible pattern to kind of train with. But play with like sideways, backwards, forwards. You're looking for now the ability to kind of shift. The knees especially super soft. That's great. Okay, perfect. Start to add in now. You can do this as like a sequence, or you can do it in like little sections, 2 or 3 movements, but start to feel that you're going to add in now the focus. So the focus is going to kind of come back, and you want the ability to kind of snap in, release it. Snap in, release it. Snap in, release it. Just like it's going to come from the ground, from the hips, so that the footwork is super crucial for this. Just play with a little bit of a snap. Snap. Nice. Okay, last thing. Drop the bucket and just play with a little bit of. There's 2 things you can do with this now. You've got also the blend with the, again, this kind of raise with the sword, which is protection, which is these kind of movements. And also think about the striking kind of just where you've got kind of a 𝒕𝒣 work coming in. Try and kind of link them together in the movements now. Just kind of moving around. Again, just get the feeling that the arms, they're going to link in. Just the first few. Kind of linking with the movement, they're getting into position. And then just think about these kind of moves kind of entering in, working with strikes. Be super soft. So again, once you can get that feeling of impact and a percussion out, wow, start to play with it a little bit. Wow. So those movements are going to kind of flow off each other. Just play a little bit of striking, a little bit of blending with the arms. And ideally, they're going to kind of come together, blend and the strike. Perfect. Okie dokie, great. Yeah, the other thing with this also, if you think about the transition from the sword to the bodywork, obviously the moves become a much more circular, and you've got less that feeling of percussion, or it's less kind of obvious than I can do those kind of percussion things. Think about like taking that move to 𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒃. It's there, but it's a much more of a kind of full body thing. So it takes a kind of rounding out also this kind of way, which is why also the Joe is useful for us, because we get stuck in the bokken work. Like we end up trapped in these kind of patterns, like I'm trying to somehow create sword work patterns with the body. But again, it's trying to take that organization and train it when we're doing either thing, bokken Joe or empty hand, something like that. Okay. Great. Okay, let's bow. Here we go. Great. Domo arigato gozaimasu.
Domo arigato gozaimasu.